It is Tuesday, March 14th, and the Give and Go Show is back in your life. My name is Griffin Queen, and as always, I'm joined by Matt Modi and Matt Ferentinos to break
What's
down the past
good?
week of basketball, to break down the NBA standings. As of today, we're probably not going to talk about this at all, but as of today, March Madness is technically starting because today is the first of the first four games. So we do have two NCAA Division One basketball games tonight. Before we
When
get
do we
going,
gotta complete the brackets?
we have to complete the brackets by Thursday.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're fine.
because it'll be dependent
Because
on
these are
who
the games
wins.
where it's like they put multiple on
It's the
that. Like it's like
plan.
it could be this team or this
Yeah.
team.
So
Yeah.
if you do your bracket today or tomorrow, you're gonna have to update it prior to Thursday because there could be teams that technically lose today that you may have winning a game in the first round or something like that.
Yeah.
Before we get going, make sure you click the like button on YouTube. Make sure if you're not already subscribed, you click that subscribe button so you're in the know whenever we drop a new episode or any other videos. And comment below if there's anything you want us to talk about in a future episode or anything that you'd like us to post about. Modi is currently getting licked by his dog, so I'm trying not to laugh. But I mean, that's a good problem to have.
That's just
right?
life. That's just life.
That's just life. That's life with
Yeah.
dogs.
Especially one as friendly as her. Sorry, go ahead.
Before we get going, I actually wanted to kick it off talking about the Mavericks, but there's something else that I wanted to bring up because we haven't done this in a little while. Let's have a little bit of anime talk. Modi, you're watching Attack on Titan, and
Yeah.
So good.
you're using my Crunchyroll account, so I know how far you are into it. You're churning through episodes.
You're following my journey. Yeah, no, I mean, Attack on Titan is like the ideal anime in my eyes. It's like every episode is meaningful. It's like the music isn't like I'm a huge music and like score guy when it comes to like score and then also like actual music. That's why I love Scrubs so much. And the score is like phenomenal. Like the opening credits. Oh, it's
what do
so
you think
good.
of the studio doing the first few seasons of Attack on Titan? Because they
So
didn't change.
he's only in the first season.
So it's only Wit.
Yeah, so you won't get to Mappa until season 4.
Okay.
Yeah, honestly, that could have been a different language you guys were speaking. I don't know.
Wit is the studio
them.
that produced the first 3 seasons. Mappa has done the final season. Basically, it was just because of this happens a lot with
anime.
anime.
The studio that does Jujutsu Kaisen too. That's kind of how I like
okay.
recognize
Chainsaw
their
Man.
like style. Yeah.
They do a bunch of stuff. They're very good. They have a lot of really talented animators. They also
And
take on
Vinland
way
Saga.
too much work.
Yeah.
I assume they get paid.
Can you relate to that?
But yeah, you know, not like Japanese mangakas. I don't take on anywhere near the amount of work that those guys do. Those guys literally work themselves to death by like 50.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that I'm not in that position. But no, I agree on everything you're saying. Ferentinos and I are not going to spoil anything for you as it relates to Attack on Titan, but it is one of the crowning points of the genre. It's the anime Game of Thrones. Like it's literally one of the best shows.
The parallels too,
ever.
and like the times that they came out, it was like right on par with Game of Thrones.
Yeah, to me, it's like this is like the standard. Like I love Naruto and One Piece and like the universe building, but like the arcs will take hundreds of episodes and it just like drags on. Like you could like in some cases you could skip like 10 episodes and theoretically like not really miss anything, especially like if it's in the middle of a fight scene.
There's a period in One Piece in the episode in like the 400s to 600s, and I'm sure it's still the case after that, where you could honestly skip 20 to 30 episodes and very little happen, and you're going to see a flashback sequence at the beginning that's going to cover everything
missed.
Yeah.
Every single thing you missed. If you were to skip 20 to 30 episodes of Attack on Titan, which I actually saw a comment from somebody recently where they didn't watch the first season, which is insane to me.
How would you know anything?
Exactly. If you miss 2 episodes, you're like, what the fuck is happening?
Yeah, literally. Like if you miss 2 episodes, you go from like I forget the exact period, but like when the scout team goes out before you meet the female Titan, like if you skip 2 episodes, you go from having not met that character to like 2 episodes deep into like they might have already caught her at that point, and then like she brought, like it's just
particularly
crazy.
The way that they do those episodes, because those episodes go with Aaron's and the scouts. They go on the patrol, then it flashes back to his training with the scouts, and then it goes back to him with them catching the female Titan.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you miss those flashback sequences, you'd be like, how do these characters know each other? Who's the little dude? Like, what's going on?
His ODM gear failed and he still passed the test.
Yeah.
Oh, that was,
you would miss so much. Yeah.
Have you met Commander Erwin yet?
Oh, he's great.
Erwin?
Him and Levi.
Yeah. Oh, Levi's. Yeah.
Yeah.
Levi's a fan favorite. I think he literally is the most popular anime character, and then like Gojo might be second or something.
Yeah.
Ervin's up there for me when I'm you haven't, I don't know if you've gotten any yet, but I'm just
Dedicate
gonna
your
say
hearts.
this is not a spoiler. You actually would have had at least one so far. Like his speech when he first tells them about joining the scout regiment, and he like is like, this is a genuine salute, and then it's like the 10 or 11 cadets that join or whatever.
Yeah,
like
that was...
there's Ervin Smith motivational speech compilations on YouTube, and I swear to God I watched that shit.
I believe you. So yeah, I think I'm at the very beginning of season 2. Crunchyroll's weird because I don't think it dictates by season.
It's broken. It's so fucked up.
But so he matches Aaron's energy so much too. Ervin, like I feel like that's the commander. Like it's like, yep, that's why I want to do this shit.
Yeah, they're both fucking
so
psychos.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, this is like peak anime to me. This is like the standard. Like every episode matters. It's incredibly well done. Like,
I love how the combat's so unique too. Like it's definitely
combat's amazing,
a crazy concept, but yeah, like the ODM gear and just everything that it's like, it makes it so like the fight scenes that come up, like some of my favorite fight scenes.
They're visceral.
Yeah,
like you feel like you're being whipped around the battlefield,
and then when you meet Kenny, that shit is wild. Like
Kenny,
there's some crazy shit.
Shut up.
Anyways, don't hate me. My dog is... I should have let her out before we started. I forgot. Good. So my dog's crying to go out. So just give me 2 minutes. You guys,
of course, yeah,
carry on without me. But yeah, sorry about that.
Sure, yeah, by all means.
Well, this is what happens in Attack on Titan.
yeah, shut the fuck up. So a couple things that we're going to talk about while Modai is out of here. We're going to lead off with, obviously we led off with anime talk, but we're going to talk a little bit about the Kyrie Irving to the Mavs trade and kind of how that looks about a month later at this point. We're going to talk about the various different, major trades that happened. So Kevin Durant to the Suns, Kyrie Irving to the Mavs. Those are two big ones that I want to talk about because they're really shaping the way I think we're looking at these NBA teams right now. I also want to talk about the trades that the Lakers made because they kind of went in the opposite direction from the Mavs, and
it's working.
Yeah, and it's working, and so I want to talk about that a little bit. We'll talk about KD's injury, obviously super unfortunate injury. We'll talk about the Celtics a little bit. They've kind of been on a little bit of a downturn recently. Just looking at their recent record, they lost a couple games in a row. They dropped 3 straight. Granted, 2 of them were to the Knicks and the Cavs in double OT and OT. So I wouldn't call those bad losses. I mean, obviously not great for seeding to lose to 2 teams that are close behind them in the standings, but like that's going to happen. You're going to have regular season losses in overtime to other really good teams. And then we'll talk about the MVP debate as everyone's been doing. And we'll kind of talk about the dynamic between Jokic, Embiid, and Giannis, and why I think the conversation is shifting a little bit away from Jokic, while at the same time giving him a pass for things that we don't give Joel Embiid and Giannis Antetokounmpo passes for.
I know last episode we were talking about home and away splits too, and just because Giannis had just played the Kings. Did you see that scuffle last night?
I did, yeah, with Trey Lyles and Brook Lopez. Yeah, if I'm Trey Lyles, I absolutely do not want smoke with Brook Lopez.
Yeah,
that's like the bottom of the list of things that I want in my life.
Yeah, he's like if you would fight an NFL player, like you don't want to fuck with Aaron Donald. It's like,
right.
Why would you?
Yeah, why would you take on a 7-foot dude who's renowned for his ability under the rim to just body people?
Who grew up, fighting his
other 7-foot twin brother,
the same size as
like
him.
Literally at the bottom of the list of the NBA players that I would want to take on are the fucking Cro-Magnon Lopez brothers, like guys who literally look like an earlier version of humanity.
Oh, the Disney World bros.
Yeah, they literally look like Titans from Attack on Titan. That is the closest comparison I can make to the Lopez brothers.
Them and Jokic's brothers. I want no part of.
Yeah. And then also Giannis's brothers, because there's nothing to be gained from getting in a fight with somebody who's that big, that athletic, but not that good at their sport where they don't have that much to lose. Like, no, thank you.
Yeah.
A battle of the brothers. I feel like that's a good list. Like which brothers would be the best.
The Holiday brothers would come with like they'd be sneaky good at it. Like they're a lot smaller, but they'd come with like weapons.
The Ball brothers, bottom of the list.
Ball brothers getting injured. Yeah. Who the other white guys that used to be in Denver and Charlotte?
Oh, the Plumleys.
Yeah.
Oh, they would be up there. Yeah.
Yeah, the Plum Dog Millionaires.
Bunch of cavemen. I saw
Another bunch of guys that are like 7
Morris,
feet tall.
Morris twins.
the Morris
The
twins.
Morai. Yeah,
Morai. It's too close to my last name.
it's true.
Yeah. I saw like a funny like meme of the Jokic brothers. Like someone put like the Akatsuki cloaks on them when like Jokic got in a fight with, I think it was the Marcus Morris one, when like there's like when he like basically
where he shoved him in the back and broke his spine.
Yeah. I was not on the Jokic's side on that one, but yeah.
I wasn't. I was not on his side because I think that was a fucked up thing to do. But at the same time, if any single player in the NBA gets mad at a Morai twin and decides to have a fight with them or to sucker punch them or something, I think you got to defend it a little bit more than you do with most other players, because they're such piece of shit players and they do that stuff regularly, and they have like literally in their personal lives, like with like 5 other guys, jumped other people. I don't know. I mean, like, I'm not saying it's like just desserts. Like, obviously I don't want the guy to be fucked up for his career, but at the same time, like, even though he was on my team, fuck Markieff Morris, fuck Marcus Morris.
Yeah, that's fair. They're like Dylan Brooks. Like, you pretty much any time there's an instigation, I almost always am like, well, there's probably
you can blame them for it, because chances are they're going to be heavily involved in it,
and they don't get the benefit of the doubt. Like, no, even if
they're past that point. They're past that point. Yeah, it's the same shit with Draymond Green. Like, if you continue to be in these situations, granted, sometimes they're not going to be your fault, but I just can't give you the benefit of the doubt anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of Dylan Brooks, since we're talking about the Mavs too, I was hoping that Kyrie would actually torch them yesterday, because he was like, "Oh, I hope Kyrie's ready for the smoke. I just shut down Steph Curry." Like how he's like such a good defender and all this shit.
I can't stand that guy.
So I mean,
he's a really good defender, but he is bad at everything else, and he's so annoying to look at. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
We talked about that last week. We talked about him versus Marcus Smart and how I'd much rather have Marcus Smart on my team, despite also disliking Marcus Smart.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some of the stuff that we wanted to talk about this week. Let's start off. We were talking about the Mavs a little bit before we got on here. I had sent a stat to you guys last night, and I was like, I want to talk about this. And so prior to the trade for Kyrie, Dallas was the 4 seed, and obviously they wanted to make a move to get past that. They were 30-26. Since getting Kyrie, they're now the 8 seed, and they're 34-35. So they've lost 9 games, and they've won 4 games in that time. Their defense looks awful. Luka looks the least happy I've ever seen him playing basketball. This, in my opinion, is like I thought this when it happened. This is an all-time bad trade. I don't think it's going to get better from here. Giving up all of your depth for an offensive, straight up superstar who can only play one side of the ball was a bad choice. And you already had depth issues. You already had defense issues. Like, the personalities are not going to mesh.
To the Nets too.
The Nets have been winning games, and the Mavs look the worst that I think I've seen them since Dirk's last year.
Well, because were you going to allude to the philosophy how like the Lakers did the opposite of the Suns and Mavs, like trading?
Yeah, and I think that they're a good reverse point. And you know, I don't blame the Suns as much as I do the Mavs. I do want to obviously note them as well. They traded some of their depth. Cam Johnson, Mikal Bridges, and a Jay Crowder who was not playing for Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant was injured. He then played a couple games. He's now injured again. The Suns really can't expect him to be back for the regular season. So they got rid of these guys that were helping them win games. I mean, Mikal Bridges on his own won them 5 or 10 games this season.
He's averaging 26 on the
now
Nets.
You're missing him, but you don't have the other guy. And then on the other side of things, you got the Lakers, who traded a ostensible superstar in Russell Westbrook and got back 3 or 4 different pieces. You know, they traded Kendrick Nunn to get Rui Hachimura. They got some second round picks. They traded a first round pick, but they made it work by getting Vanderbilt and getting Malik Beasley and getting Mo Bamba and some other pieces. This is what people should be pivoting to. We got to stop pivoting into these offensive superstars being paired together, because it's not going to be, you know, Kevin Durant and James Harden and Kyrie Irving on the court together. It's going to be, you know, fucking Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, who do not have the abilities that Kevin Durant does or that James Harden does, honestly. Like, you can't hide that team on defense.
Well, it's also like in the playoffs, like it just takes one bad defensive matchup. I think that's like the anti-Jokic kind of circle jerk that we've been seeing is that like his defense. I mean, the Spurs worked him, and you saw like that. I saw a post on our NBA about
They scored
like
like 80 points in the paint.
they just attacked Jokic. All they did was attack Jokic, and like the Nets did the same thing.
The Bulls did.
Bulls did the
If
same
the
thing. Like they're
Bulls
getting
and
it.
Spurs can take advantage of something like that, there's something fundamentally wrong.
Any team in the West who they play in the playoffs will be able to take advantage of it, especially if the Mavs are like the 8 seed. Like I could see Luka and Kyrie torching the Nuggets and winning, but then maybe falling off in the next playoff series, probably losing like the Clippers or somebody like that.
Sure.
I could just see Luka doing that. But yeah, I mean, the Nets have had some disappointing games, but seeing like all of those depth pieces do pretty well, like Spencer Dinwiddie and Dorian Finney-Smith has hit some big threes, and they've been the number one defense over the past 6 games, which the 3-and-D guys and the depth guys and the high energy guys that you trade away, there is that trade-off. I mean, we've been winning a lot of close games, but Nets won a lot of close games when they had KD and Kyrie too. It's like that trade-off of okay. And Kevin Durant's different because he actually is an excellent defender too. He's just got to be on the court.
If the Nets had one star player, if they could replace Ben Simmons' money with one star player,
yeah,
it would be a genuine like top 4 contender right now because they have everything that you would want in a contender with the exception of a go-to guy. And maybe Bridges becomes that guy. But they've got big, lengthy guards. They've got big, lengthy wings who can shoot, who can ball handle, who can pass, who can defend. They've got literal depth, like 1 through 12 at this point. If Ben Simmons was an NBA player, it'd be 1 through 13. Like, what the flaw in this team is that they just don't have a go-to guy. Somebody was saying this, it might have been Russillo. He was saying that this Nets team literally looks like it was designed for Luka Doncic. If you put Luka Doncic on this Nets team, 2 seed, like this is they're competing with the Bucks and the Celtics immediately.
Yeah.
I think there's a couple of things there. With the Suns, like I don't think it's as fair to put them in the same boat as the Mavericks because Kevin Durant is better. Like he's just better as Kyrie Irving. It's not even close. And he plays defense.
Yep.
And the Suns like they're still 6-4 in their last 10, and that's with losing 2 straight. So it's not like they have been playing as poorly as the Mavericks. To me, it was like I think the Mavs were trading from a place of like desperation. We're just like we need to do something. Where the Suns were more so like, okay, like we're always going to be good, but we're never going to be great. And like, this is our chance to get from good to great. So to me, I think the Suns deserve like more of the benefit of the doubt. And like KD spraining is like, obviously you can't count on him to stay healthy, but the way in which he got hurt, they're just like, he's just
freakish.
cursed.
It's freakish.
So
it's out of nowhere.
It's so stupid. But I also don't think you can necessarily say like, well, the Lakers traded like Russell Westbrook in a superstar to like, and look how, because like Russell Westbrook was like a net negative for their team.
Superstar in this sense being like superstar contract.
In the
somebody who individually by themselves is taking up a third of the cap.
Yeah, which like if you can get rid of someone that like if the Nets could trade Ben Simmons for like the haul that the Lakers got, like that would be a good trade. But to me, it's like it's not necessarily the same situation. And I will say back to the Nets, like I do think they did a pretty good job pivoting. Like when you think about like what they had before the James Harden trade to what they have now, getting rid of all 3 of them, like that's a pretty good pivot. Like they have made
significantly better moves than they did last time when they went through the Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett saga.
Yeah,
way
obviously, like you need to get the star, or else they're always going to be the 4 through 7 seed. But like if they can, like if someone pops or if they are able to make a trade, like they are well set up for a superstar.
I mean, look, straight up, maybe Mikal Bridges takes that step. Nobody would have thought that James Harden was going to be an MVP when he was a 6th man of the year. And then he ended up being potentially the best offensive force in basketball for like 5 straight years. So it's possible that somebody on this team takes that step. Sure. I don't think it's going to happen. It's unlikely. But I also, and I gave Russillo credit for this a minute ago. Ferentinos has also been saying this as well, that he wants Luka Doncic on this team and he could consider him coming to this team. So I got to give Ferentinos credit for that as well. There could be a disgruntled star that looks at this situation in Brooklyn, looks at the amount of money that's come off their books recently, looks at how many 3-and-D guys they've got under 25 and is like, yo, get me on that team by 2025. Like that's the team that I'm going to win a title with.
We'll take John Morant
I can see it
too.
happening. Yeah. John Morant, shout out in rehab right now.
'cause he's not going to get the All NBA is costing him a lot of money on his contract.
$30 million,
too.
I think.
Yeah,
$40
yeah.
million.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Crazy.
And there's always going to be there's always going to be a superstar. Like, you never know who it's going to be.
Yeah.
But like Karl Anthony Towns, not necessarily like I don't know, but Karl Anthony
I wouldn't
Towns
want him. If I'm the Nets, I wouldn't want him.
Fair, yeah, but like Embiid wouldn't be crazy. Obviously, Cat wouldn't be crazy. Trae Young, I'm out on, but like he can. I don't know if you qualify like how you qualify him, but there's always going to be someone.
I mean, you said Anthony Edwards.
Yeah, honestly.
Anthony Edwards might want to push his way out in a couple of years because the Timberwolves might be so committed to Karl Anthony Towns that Ant is like, yo, fuck this. I can go somewhere else. I can be the man. I don't have to deal with this Rudy Gobert, Karl Anthony Towns, me bullshit. And I can play in a bigger market and make a ton of money because we already know that he's got interest in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
LA.
It's harder when you're younger because like he hasn't even signed his first or second, whatever you want to call it.
His second extension or whatever it is. His rookie
first extension, second contract, whatever it is. So like,
because your first team they make it so
they can match
pay
everything.
you way more. Yeah.
Which is why everyone does it outright. And if they don't do it, it means that there's some insane concern about the player. Like everyone does it.
I was gonna say, has a young superstar like ever not just signed a max?
It's
like,
not even the young superstars. It's the young like fringe starters.
Jordan Poole, Tyler Hero.
That was the weird thing about the Wizards and Rui Hachimura. Like everyone was like, yeah, this is a good NBA player, and the Wizards wouldn't give him an extension, which was a weird choice.
Yeah.
Like you do it for everybody, whether they're the first pick or the 45th pick.
Yeah.
But they didn't do it.
And no player has also not signed it. Like I know there was
no one's giving that money back because it's the most money you can get until your actual like legitimate max.
Yeah, I forget who it was, but there was always like the threat that I think it was Zion he was going to sign the qualifying offer because that's what you would have to do. Like you sign the qualifying offer, then the following year you're restricted free agent.
Right.
I think it was Zion who
might have been.
But he didn't do it, and obviously he never plays basketball anymore. So good thing he didn't do it.
He got paid a lot of money. So
yeah. But I'm in agreement with you on the Mavericks. The only thing I'll say to just play the other side is like Luka and Kyrie are both hurt. Like they haven't really played recently. And Luka was hurt when they first got Kyrie, and like their record isn't good with them. So I'm not saying like that's not the argument. I just at least should give them some time
until they're full strength.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we'll see what they have with a full season next year. I'm just progressively more and more. And I think the league is starting to realize this too. There was a point where they were super into the big three. And then it turned into a big two with a ton of like 3-and-D players around them. Yeah. Now it seems like they're trending again towards get as many stars as you can and figure it out. And unless you're the Warriors and you have this system that basically you can slot any high IQ player into, I just don't know if you need that many stars. I think max 2 guys because they're taking up so much fucking money.
Yeah.
And then slotting complementary role players around them because
I feel like
particularly the way that injuries are these days.
Like 2 guards, I don't think is it. Like one has to be a forward.
That can't play defense, 2 guards that can't play defense.
Again, we can look at the Warriors. We can say 2 guards if one of them is Steph Curry and one of them is Klay Thompson because Steph Curry, greatest offensive weapon ever. Klay Thompson, all defense for like 7 straight years. But John Wall and Bradley Beal, even in their primes, you can't be giving that much money to 2 guys when only half of them are playing defense.
Yeah, and John Wall is a good defender. Like,
he was a good defender until he started to slow down. Bradley Beal was never a good defender.
Yeah.
And even with the amount of offense they were generating, it just like it never worked because your 2 highest paid players both can't be under 6'4". It just it doesn't fly.
Yeah, it's CJ McCollum and Damian Lillard. Like it just
perfect example. And I guess now, Damian Lillard and Anthony Simons.
Anthony Simons,
and they're just repeating the same mistakes.
Trae Young and what's his face?
DeJounte Murray.
DeJounte Murray,
Yeah. I mean, I understand in a guard-driven league wanting to pair these high offense guards with each other. But how many more times are we going to see that it doesn't work and that you need to have a legitimate big money superstar big man to win a title?
We'll see with the Cavs with Mitchell and Garland because they're like, I mean, they're not that undersized. They're both like,
I feel like Mobley is.
And they have Mobley.
Donovan Mitchell is not ridiculously tall for his position, but he's got the length,
long arms too.
Doesn't he have like the wingspan of somebody who's like 7 feet
6'8" or something?
I don't think it's 7 feet, but it's close.
It's like 80 some inches. Like it's crazy.
Yeah. So I also they have Evan Mobley. Like if you put Evan
Yeah.
Mobley on those,
If
like
Evan
any
Mobley
other
continues to develop, if Jared Allen continues to be as
If
good
it's
as he
not
is,
hurt.
Yeah.
I
Also,
feel like he's
yeah.
always hurt.
Jared
Yeah,
Allen
so-
doesn't get the shine that he deserves for being legitimately one of the best defensive big men in basketball.
Yeah.
So to go back to Donovan Mitchell, he's shorter than I thought. He's 6'1" with a 6'10" wingspan. Like I thought he was
6'10"
like,
Oh my
wingspan.
God.
There you go.
I thought he was like 6'4". So
I
but
thought
guess
he
the
was
wing-
6'3" with a 7-foot wingspan. So I
Damn.
had the differences
The
right.
2
but
inches,
I
yeah.
made it a little bit too much.
Hey,
That's
2 inches,
crazy.
not a big deal. I've heard
That's-
2 inches.
Well, you know, it's all relative. It depends
Yeah.
on what you're adding the 2 inches to. Yeah, dude, Donovan Mitchell, he's a freak. Like he's I don't mean this disrespectfully, but he's a knuckle dragger. Like his hands go down low.
And he's
I feel
finally
like-
playing defense.
Yeah.
He could have been a great swimmer or even a golfer, like how he could whip his hands around so much. Oh my
Yeah, or he
God,
could make way more
crazy.
money playing
Yeah, I was
basketball.
gonna- yeah.
It was like Tim Duncan. Tim Duncan was going to be like this Olympic swimmer.
Yeah,
And then
that's right.
his pool got destroyed in the Virgin Islands after a hurricane. And they were like, hey, maybe basketball?
Yeah,
And so he went from being a dude who would have topped out at like a couple $1 million to making, you know, a few $100 million and being the face of one of the most famous franchises in sports. Instead, he could have been like, you know, a weirdly tall Michael Phelps, which is not that cool.
But a lot less marketable.
A lot less marketable.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on a little bit. I want to talk about the MVP debate. Obviously, we've had this conversation a few times, and we will continue. We'll continue to have it, you know, for the next month because they have not determined yet who it's going to be. Obviously, the big ones are Jokic, Embiid, and Giannis. I think Tatum has dropped out, Curry's dropped out, Doncic has dropped out. Donovan Mitchell has actually, you know, he's kind of stuck where he is. I think he's in like the 7 to 10 range. James Harden has made his way into that conversation. I think
top
he's 8 or 9.
I saw.
Is he top 5 now?
8 or 9 like odds,
he,
but I think like they had like some power ranking or some article where he was up there in the top 5.
Sure. Yeah, I think on odds he might be 8 or 9.
Yeah.
But obviously, like it's gonna be one of Giannis, Jokic, or Embiid, even if one of them dies tomorrow. Knock on wood, but like that's the reality.
Yeah.
So let's talk about it a little bit. I want to start with Modi. Obviously, he's an Embiid guy. What's your top 3 ranking for how this is going to shake out, and explain why you've got the guy at number 1 that you've got at number 1?
If like to me, I like if I'm not being biased, I really don't understand the argument that that's not Giannis unless it's just like fatigue. Literally, like I think that's like he's already won 2 because he's got the best record. They just now they have like a 2-game lead, I think, over the Celtics now. And Middleton's missed the entire year basically, and he's like a shell of himself. When he has come back, he hasn't been as good. Like Drew Holiday's been really good, and I think the Bucks system has a lot to do with like obviously the overall team success. Like they're good without him, and they're really good with him. Which I think the biggest difference with Jokic and Embiid is like when those guys aren't on the floor, the teams are just tank, cannot play basketball. So to me, it's like I think it's more impressive going like the hardest thing to do in sports is to go from good to great, whether that's a team, a player, like that's the hardest thing to do. So the Bucks going from good to the best team in the NBA, I think is more valuable than the Nuggets and the Sixers going from like a 35 win team to like a 55, whatever pace they're on now. To me, I think like, I know we talked about this a ton, and like, I'm starting to do the thing I hate where it's like, oh, Jokic actually sucks now, which I was like, why can't we just like both be good? But it's gotten to the point, especially his defense, like nobody's ever going to say anything bad about his offense, but like the KOCs of the world who just like try to come on and say like, he's actually like not bad at defense. And like, he's actually a good defender.
They're wrong.
They're just wrong. Like just because you get blocks and steals doesn't make you a good defender. There's more to it than that. And
kicking the ball too.
Did you see that? You saw that stat or
46
that Zach Lowe talked about it? He intentionally kicks the ball.
That's because he's just such an intelligent basketball player.
He literally can't move.
Well, that was
so he's like,
the argument that I saw for some people. They were like, "Yeah, you're taught that in youth basketball," and it's like, "Well, this isn't youth basketball. This is the NBA. It is legitimately breaking the rules."
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying that you should give him a tech for it or whatever, but let's also not give him credit for it.
Yeah, I think if he gets like 3 in a game, you give him a tech though.
Yeah, sure. Because at that point, it is like a delay
hampering
game.
the offense
game.
in the game.
So to me, like, I think the biggest difference is like Jokic is probably the best offensive player of that group because of like the way he can pass is just no other big man is capable of doing that. But like to a legitimate net negative on defense for a center, I don't think is you can just be like, oh, well, like bad defensive players have won in the past, like Westbrook won and Harden won. Well, it's like it's different when you're a guard. Like it just is. And I don't know if this has been going on all year or if teams are just now starting to do it, but like the way that he has just been getting roasted in the past like 7 days, I don't like, again, I don't know if people on social media are now just taking more note of it or if it has gotten worse like that I can't comment on, but like you don't see Embiid or Giannis get targeted the way that Jokic does.
No.
And
And a lot of it's in transition, they're saying too, which they're so bad at. But like, I mean, in a lot of half court offenses, they're just passing around and just going at Jokic.
pick and roll, and it's like, yeah, and he's just getting taken. It's like that meme of Anderson Varejao in the playoffs, where he's just like literally just like trying to dance on the court because he can't keep up. Or Rudy Gobert is like the same thing. So if I was not being biased, I would go Giannis, Embiid, Jokic. But I am going to be biased, so I'm going to go Embiid, Giannis, Jokic.
Okay, all right, yeah, no, I mean, look, I'm not saying there's a wrong order to this. I honestly think you could give any one of these guys MVP and you can come up with a justification for it.
Real quick, I meant to mention this. My last point is the thing that frustrates me the most is the people that act like if you don't agree with their pick, then you're a moron.
Sure.
Like I some guy on Twitter like was like, it's obviously Jokic, like get a grip on reality. And I was like we can have different opinions and like that's okay. Like one person's not a moron because they like Giannis or Embiid.
Right. Particularly when guys are this good, like it's a game of inches on who's the best.
Yeah.
Although I will say I tweeted earlier today and you responded to it. Looking forward to Giannis beating the Suns tonight and still not getting MVP respect, despite being Check's notes the best player in the league for the 4th straight year, which I genuinely believe is the case. Honestly, I could have said 5th straight year, but I think there's a little bit of it's 2023, 2018 LeBron. I would say he was probably the best that year, even though he didn't play, he missed some games and the team wasn't as good. But 2018 LeBron is like
still crazy.
Maybe the best basketball player ever. I don't know. Ferentinos, before you give your take real quick, I want to say what you mentioned, Modai, about the way that social media has reacted to Jokic in the past week or two and the way that this discussion is starting to trend in a different direction, to me feels very indicative of what NBA fans consume, which is not the games. They're not watching Denver Nuggets games. Denver Nuggets games don't do well. They don't have that many national TV games compared to the Sixers or the Lakers or the Celtics or the Heat, or the Warriors, obviously, of course, the Warriors. And they tend to be on at West Coast hours. You've got a lot of like 10 p.m. Eastern start times for these games, which people are not watching largely unless they're like prime TNT games between the Lakers and the Warriors. And most of what people are consuming about Jokic has been highlights. And it's been Zach Lowe talking about him. And it's been Bill Simmons talking about him. And it's been these different writers talking about what he does on the court and talking about his advanced statistics rather than people actually watching the games and seeing just how often he's being put in a spin cycle on the pick and roll and getting punished. Granted, his offense most of the time makes up for that. But when things tighten up in the playoffs, and I know we're not supposed to consider the playoffs for an MVP award, but we do, like it's going to happen again. He's going to lose games again because of his defense.
I wouldn't be surprised if they did make it out. Like if they get a bad matchup in the first round, like would you be shocked if the Mavs beat them?
Let me tell you right now, I would be shocked if the Mavs beat them. Absolutely. But I will tell you right now, if they are the 1 seed come the start of the playoffs and the Lakers are the 8 seed, and LeBron James and Anthony Davis play 5 games in that series, the Lakers are winning that series because that is 2 people that are built in a lab to destroy this Denver team.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't disagree with that. I just think the people that take the biggest advantage of Jokic are like pick and roll guards.
Sure.
That's why I named the Mavericks. Like Kyrie and Luka, if they just both go off for 40.
I just feel so Luka's going to go off for 40. I believe that absolutely. Kyrie is always a question mark to me because it's like literally on off years, he'll put up, 15 points on 4 of 21 shooting. And then there's other years where he'll put up 35 points in like 5 straight playoff games. So I just don't know how to like envision this team in the playoffs. And they're also going to give up so much on the defensive end the Mavs are not the team that I would take to beat the Nuggets, but I would take a lot of the top. I mean, like put them up against the Kings, and Sabonis and Fox are going to eat against the Nuggets in the playoffs.
It's weird seeing the Kings with 40 wins, and then because I talked about Giannis, this never got brought up. We were talking about teams that have good home and away splits. The Kings are 21-14 at home and 19-13 away. Like
they're one of the only. They might be the only positive playoff team.
The only team in the Western Conference with a winning record on the road.
Which is really interesting because when the season started and everyone was doing the light the beam stuff, they were actually one of the worst to start the season, where it was like they were dominating at home and they were really bad away. And then they flipped the switch and they just became good everywhere. This Kings team is for real. I'm really enjoying watching them play basketball. Ferentinos, what are your MVP picks? Who's your top three, and who do you think is going to be number one?
Yeah, I'll be a little more, I guess, cookie cutter. I do think it's Giannis 1, Embiid 2, and Jokic 3. If
that's not cookie cutter, that's the opposite of what the voters have right now.
Yeah, the literal, yeah. Well, yeah, Embiid's second, but yeah, you flipping Jokic and Giannis.
It's because I mean the Bucks are first, and Giannis has won before, and he literally had another game against the Kings where he had like plus 45 points and 10 rebounds. It's like some cherry pick stat, but like the only other players that have had more than 5 games who have done that have won MVP, and I think he has like 8 or so games of that this year. He's just an incredible defender. I mean, he takes over games in the fourth quarter and still wins. And like you said, like the Bucks are still good without him, but with him, they're the title favorite. But I mean, if the Sixers can get up to the 2 seed maybe, and they close the gap a little bit, and Embiid, goes out the regular season just like they're still on a tear. He has a few 40-point games and just like some game winners and takes over. Like I could see the narrative shifting more towards Embiid and him getting it. But I don't think Jokic should get it this year, especially since like they've been dropping games and are still first in the West, but like the Sixers even I think have maybe the same record as they do. Yeah, they're one
win behind. Same number of losses, one less win.
I don't really think you could give it to him by using seed as the argument. And then like Embiid right now is playing better than Jokic on both sides of the court. So yeah.
Although I will say the Embiid defense has dropped off a little bit. I do feel like there's been a little bit of a regression because he's been playing a lot of games for him.
Yeah, but when he is on, I guess, and energized, he has the potential to play all NBA defense.
Right. There's not even a comparison between the two of them defensively.
We're talking about the social media circle jerk, though. I literally saw a clip of it's like Jokic getting roasted by the Spurs, and then someone posted, ironically, the same title, like Embiid getting isolated against.
I saw that too. I saw that too. Yeah.
And Embiid's like blocking shots, everybody in the paint,
stopping people before they get
balls,
to the paint.
like and there's multiple highlights in the same game. So
yeah, I saw that too. That was good. That was it was quite a shit post. Yeah, look, I mean, I think you guys gave the same order, correct?
Yeah.
Your preferred order or your belief on who's the actual MVP would be Giannis, Embiid, Jokic.
Yeah.
I'm gonna look. Everyone knows that I think Giannis is the MVP. I think it's not going to go that way, though. I think it's going to be Jokic, Embiid, Giannis. I think the narrative, and I hate saying this because I fucking hate when people talk about narratives over results, but I think the narrative is just, even if like certain people like Zach Lowe are starting to go in the other direction a little bit, I think people have already picked Jokic. I think it's worth noting that of the 3 of them, he's played the most games. Granted, they're all playing a lot of games. Jokic has played 60, Embiid's played 54, Giannis has played 53. I think Giannis had to come out of a couple games, so we'll probably say that he's around like 50 or 51. Embiid may have had to come out of like 1 game. And Jokic, he's in a game. Unless he gets ejected, like he's there.
Yeah,
which is a concern. He does get ejected more than the other 2. I think you also have to kind of look at their supporting casts, and you look at Jokic's, and it's like, yeah, it's a good supporting cast designed to make him work the best that he does. But then you look at Philly and you're like, okay, so they have another top 10 MVP player in James Harden. And then you go over to Milwaukee and you're like, they have the potential defensive player of the year in Brook Lopez. And they've got another potential all NBA guy in Drew Holiday. People deduct points for that. And I don't necessarily know that they should, because If this team was just Drew Holiday, Brooke Lopez, and their supporting cast, they'd be winning, 35 to 40 games. Like they'd be a good team, but they would not be a finals contender. And then the same thing with the Sixers. If it was James Harden leading it and Joel Embiid didn't play it all this year, they'd win 45 games because James Harden can drive you to 45 games. But Embiid's the one who unlocks the roster and makes that all work. I say all of this to say I think Jokic is going to win it, but if it were my preferred picks, it's Embiid or Giannis 1 or 2, probably Giannis 1, assuming these last 15 games are not like a complete show out performance for Embiid. And then Jokic would have been third, because I think the defense factor is just, it's too much of a negative for that position. This isn't Steph Curry being average at defense. This is a center being below average at defense. That's a problem.
And it's half the game. It's like literally defense is like, I mean, if you want to talk about like how offense is more important, whatever, but like literally on the court, defense is half of the game.
Yeah. And it's harder to track. And I get that. Like advanced stats say that Jokic is the 5th best defender of all time. There was a point where
that's crazy.
It's so stupid.
There was a point where Rocco, what's his full name? He was on the Sixers.
Robert Covington.
There was a point like 5 years ago or 6 years ago, I think it was during the Westbrook MVP season, where a bunch of these stats, I think it might have been Raptor, had to change their metric because according to them, Westbrook was putting up the greatest season of all time, and Robert Covington was the 4th most valuable player of all time.
I know that.
So something's broken there. If you can look at that and you can just say, okay, this guy who scores 9 points and 4 rebounds a game
is more valuable.
Maybe a top 50 role player is one of the most valuable players of all time. Like it's not even about the eye test at that point. It's like, it's wrong. It's wrong.
Yeah. I don't know that specific stat, but someone on Sixers Twitter did a deep dive of all the advanced stats that specifically on defense that favored Jokic. And they like aggressively outweighed how important steals are specifically for a center. It was like way too skewed towards like steals specifically for a center.
There are defensive stats that give credit to assists because assists contribute on the other side of the ball in terms of like how guys are able to get back. Yeah.
That's stupid.
That's stupid because then you're gonna have a guy like John Wall having like a 10.5 assist season, or Jokic having an 11 assist season, or James Harden having a 10 assist season or whatever, who are then going to be rated as these really good defenders when they're not. Like, I understand it's hard to come up with these metrics, but we cannot look at them. We can't look at them yet for MVP debates. We can't look at them for all NBA debates because they're just not accurate yet. They're not good enough. I feel
like that's literally cherry picking in order to make like better offensive players seem better on defense. Because it's like, okay, we made an assist that led to a bucket, which led to a half court defense versus a fast break situation. Like that's
right. And then look, you can say it out right there and you can justify in your head as to why that might affect defensive metrics. But objectively, that doesn't make sense.
You're not
as
a
defensive metric. Yeah. Like you shouldn't be giving points for defensive block. Like it doesn't. I understand the mindset, but it doesn't work. It doesn't work. It's not baseball. It's not a solved sport
of all time because he
individual players affect things too much. Like we can't put everything into math like baseball. It's not there yet.
And that's why that was a bit of a rant. Even that great.
Yeah, LeBron James carried every title. Where's Ray Allen was the real champ.
Well, he hit that big shot. LeBron wouldn't have won without it. So
that's not untrue.
Didn't Chris Bosh tip it to him?
Yeah.
Rebound to Bosh. Bang.
Because they took out Tim Duncan, right? Wasn't that the thing? The Spurs took out, or was it they took out someone who's a good rebounder?
Had they taken him out? I think Duncan was still in. I think it was somebody else.
Maybe it was somebody else, but yeah.
Robert Horry.
At that point, no. I'm not sure. I'd have to go back and look. What else did we want to talk about? We got really locked into the MVP debate for a few minutes. What's up with the Celtics? Let's talk about the Celtics really quickly.
Yeah, I was kind of facetiously mentioning the Celtics. To me, it's like they're in first pretty much the entire year. It's just like the mid to late season blues. Like you can't expect every team to be able to keep it up for an entire season. Like the Bucks went on a 16-game win streak, and next thing you know, they're in first. So I don't actually think there's anything wrong with the Celtics. I will admit losing to the Rockets is pretty bad. And I did get a lot of enjoyment out of Bill Simmons' tweet saying that the 2023 Celtics season is dire or whatever he said. That was fun for me. But I don't actually think there's anything like.
It's worth noting that their superstar MVP player seems to get the biggest pass or has the most consistent bad performances of all the other guys that are like in the MVP discussion. There are games where Jason Tatum literally looks like the worst high usage player on the court. And I think we talked about this in like November.
Yeah.
And it's still true.
It's because he's 20 years old.
Yeah, well, he's 19.
Sure he's like 22
yeah. I can't wait for him to get Rookie of the Year.
I remember we talked about it in the playoffs when he was like, had really good games, really bad games. But at the beginning of the season, he was making more of a point to get to the basket and like draw contact and get fouled. He does like that. He kind of has reverted back to his like
just jump shooting
because he probably realized it's probably beating the shit out of him. Yeah, like Jason Tatum is a big, strong, athletic dude. He is not big to the level of Giannis or LeBron
or even like Jimmy Butler.
Yeah, Jimmy Butler, who has to do that because he's not as naturally talented as Tatum, and Jimmy Butler, who plays every season with a lot of significant injuries.
Yeah, also
that end up draining him in the playoffs. But his style is predicated on getting to the line. Jason Tatum is a little bit more. There's a little bit more cunning to his game and a little bit more agility to his game than there is for Jimmy Butler.
Yeah, and that was my biggest thing with him in the playoffs. Is like and I remember we talked about this last year. Is he's like. He falls in love with every difficult shot that Kobe's ever made and thinks that's how he has to build his offense. Like the step back, like every shot he makes, it's like, well, that's a tough shot. And it's
why did you overcomplicate the shot?
Yeah. And it's like, and it's very difficult to live off of that on a night to night basis. Like, yeah, he'll get hot and he'll have games where he puts up 50 points and he looks spectacular. But like the game he hit the game winner against the Sixers, Tobias Harris literally had him in hell that entire game. Like he had a legitimately bad game. And then he hits the game winner, so everybody forgets about it. So you forget, but legitimately had a bad game because of Tobias Harris.
Well, that's the regression that you're always going to expect from jump shooters, and it's why, despite being wrong, why Charles Barkley said for years that a jump shooting team is not going to win a title until the Warriors proved him wrong. But like there's
one of the greatest dynasties in NBA history,
right? There's legitimate like basis and fact behind what Charles Barkley said, because jump shooting is always going to regress somewhat, particularly in high defense, high leverage situations. Unless you're Kevin Durant, your jump shooting is gonna regress. It's just gonna happen. He is the only guy that I think I've ever seen who, maybe like Larry Bird, but I didn't watch a whole lot of Larry Bird until I was born in 1992.
Watch some tape, Griffin.
That is going to be able to get up. There's games where Michael Jordan had bad jump shooting nights. And
Pistol Pete Mavericks never had a bad game.
Yeah. Yeah. What was the name that what's his name had for Skip Bayless when he came on the show and he dogged on him for averaging like a point a game?
Oh, Jalen Rose?
I don't know. Was it Jalen Rose or
Jalen
was
Rose
it...
is the one who dogged on him, but I don't remember what he called
him. I thought
him.
It was Mark Cuban. I thought Mark Cuban called him like Water Pistol Pete or something like that.
Oh, I remember Jalen Rose was like did you not average like whatever points in high school? And
it was like 2.7 points a game or something like that. And somebody called him, they either called him Water Pistol Pete or Water Pistol Skip or something like that. And I remember at the time being like, yo, his career is done. He makes like $8 million a year. So I was wrong. But yeah, every jump shooting team is going to regress. Every jump shooter is going to regress. And Jason Tatum chooses more often than he should to be a jump shooter.
Yeah.
So there's gonna be regression, but like if he's the number one guy on the Celtics, they might win titles. I'm not going to say they're not going to, because they're a really well-built team. They're a really well-coached team. They've got a lot of great options. They might be the most stacked team, like 1 through 8 in the league, but you're going to have Jason Tatum shoot you out of games, which is not what you want to see from your number one option.
And it does hurt. I mean, just we can just do a little update, I was going to say, on the play-in for the East, because I think the Heat have started to separate themselves a bit from the other teams. So it's like the Nets, Knicks, Heat, all like 10 games above 500, or Heat are like 5 games above 500. But then Wizards have been the worst performing play-in team, 3-7 in the last 10, 31 and 37.
But their draft stock, they're only like 2 or 3 games away from dropping into like the top 8 in the draft, which is my ideal. I do not want them to make the playoffs. My ideal would be for them to fall out of the play-in entirely. I want this experiment to fail.
Yeah, but just the Celtics, if they do drop another seed or two, if they're not really going to close out the end of the season well, and the 76ers and Cavs come on strong, like I think Tatum is elite when he does drive, which he does in the playoffs. But if he's going 7 games in the first round, like he's not going to have the energy when you got to go up against the Bucks or the Sixers later in the playoffs. So I think
No,
that is gonna be
there's
tough.
physical teams that are going to beat the shit out of him. Miami's going to
Yeah.
beat the shit out of him if they play. The Knicks will beat the shit out of him if they play. Brooklyn won't if that ends up being the matchup.
Bucks will. I mean, that'll be later, obviously. But the Bucks will.
But like they very well could have a first round matchup where the talent disparity is really big, but it ends up making them easy pickings for the second round.
Yeah, because
Toronto could end up causing a lot of problems for them if Toronto ends up winning the play-in and matching up with Boston at the 1 or 2 seed. Like Toronto is going to cause issues for them. They're not going to win. They honestly might get beaten 4 games, but they're going to beat the shit out of them for 4 games because that's how Toronto plays playoff basketball.
Yeah, I'm interested to see like the Heat Celtics in the first round or like Heat Sixers in the first round. Like I don't really know what's going on with the Heat. They're having like everybody on the team just regressed in terms of shooting.
They're also just like a wildly inconsistent team. Every time it seems like they're going to reel off like 4 straight and then they drop 4 straight.
Yeah. Like
I don't know how to think about them.
Yeah, like they're 5-5 in their last. Like the most fitting stat, the 7 through 10 seeds in the East are all 5-5 in their last 10. All of them are 5-5.
Yeah.
It's just like it's perfectly fitting.
No one wants to separate themselves in the East for those last few spots. Nobody in the West wants to separate themselves at all. The Grizzlies are obviously falling, and their playoff hopes are probably dead. Like they're still going to be in the playoffs because they have too much of a lead.
They're not going to win anything.
But they're not going to win anything. They might be missing John Morant until next year. You know, they're missing Brandon Clark no matter what until next year. They might be missing Steven Adams until next year. Like Desmond Bane's dope. He's got great arms, but I don't think he's going to be carrying them to the first round victory.
Teenagers in Memphis better watch out.
Oh, like John Morant. I was like, do you know something about Desmond Bane that I don't know? Does he Grizzlies? Have a little what's the Jazz guy? Malone. Does he have a little Malone in him? That's what I thought you meant by teenagers better watch out. I thought you meant that he was
the milkman
banging them as opposed to pulling guns on them.
You know what happens to milk when it gets old? It's spoiled.
That's
I don't know what that means, but I don't think I want to know.
It's because
Karl Malone's a pedophile, right?
Karl Malone likes teenage girls.
It's like not talked about, but like
what's the spoiled milk part?
True.
Like a girl who's in her teens is great, but when she's too old, she spoils.
And
it's a very disgusting thing.
Yeah,
it took There's a lot of
needed to get broken down like this.
No, I needed to understand how the joke made sense.
I don't think it needed to be explained, but now I feel like we should not upload this episode because it's not like I'm going to edit it or anything.
I can't edit it out.
Can't edit it. I don't have time for that. Yeah. On that note, is there anything else that you guys want to talk about? I mean, obviously, we went to the MVP race. We went through the play-ins last week. There hasn't really been a whole lot of changes outside of the Grizzlies falling a little bit. The Lakers are still 2 games below 500. They were right there. And then the Knicks beat them at the end of the game. I don't want to talk about that.
Yeah, I'm just curious to see how the things in the West, like those kind of the top 4, I think we kind of know what's going to happen now. Like we said, the Grizzlies probably won't do anything in the playoffs. Nuggets probably won't either, to be honest, but I still think they'll be the 1 seed. The Kings, Kings.
If Jamal Murray gets it together in the next 3 weeks, I would change my mentality on the Nuggets, but I don't think he has it this year.
It's his first year back, from like a devastating injury. But I guess if we're out on the Grizzlies, we're out on the Nuggets. Like that's literally the first 2 seeds. So then
although I don't think the Grizzlies will be the 2 seed for much longer.
Fair, yeah, that's fair. They're a game up on the Kings.
Yeah.
Like I don't know, like the West, every team just has an unknown. There's not like the East. I think you can clearly count on the Bucks and Celtics. The Sixers are dying to get me to buy in on them, but I refuse to do it. And even the Cavs as the 4 seed, like I would trust them in terms, like I guess they're young, but in terms of like just teams that you like trust to put it together on a night to night basis or to show up in the playoffs, like I would take the Cavs over like the Nuggets and the Grizzlies.
I mean, people shit on the Eastern Conference for what was it, 15 years? like
Finally
2004
better.
to 2019, they're better now. They
Finally
are
better.
objectively better than the West. The West has gotten old. Their superstars are breaking down. Their teams are in disarray. They've got ownership issues. They've got coach issues. They've got role player issues. They can't win on the road, which is such an indictment of playoff teams. Like, I think I would probably take the top 4 seeds in the East against potentially the field in the
Just the
West.
field, yeah. I mean, I
Granted,
don't know if the Warriors figure it out
Phoenix,
again.
I would even say I would say Phoenix over the Warriors.
Yeah,
If Kevin
'cause
Durant comes back
KD,
and looks like Kevin Durant, okay,
which
they're a
he
top
always
3
does
seed.
when he plays. So that's the thing. It's like if he
Yeah,
can come back and just stay on the court,
yeah.
you know what
Like
he's going to
if
look like. He's going to be amazing.
if somehow Phoenix matches up with the Cavs in the finals, but Kevin Durant is healthy, I'm picking Phoenix probably in 5 or
Suns.
6. Like,
Yeah, I guess that's the point. It's like they're literally every team in the West, 1 to 10. There's something you can like poke a hole in, or like something that you're unsure about. Which, I mean, I would say is not the case with the first 2 teams, top 2 teams in the East for sure. Like you trust even like I always said about the Celtics, like you're still going to trust them to beat the Sixers or Cavs in a playoff series. Bucks, obviously, you will. The West is just like everything is just so uncertain. I mean, even the Warriors, who pretty much returned the important pieces, aside from like Otto Porter from last year's team, you like can't trust them because they're 7-26 on the road. I don't know. It's just a weird year in the West. It's just a weird year.
It's a weird year.
Yeah.
It's a weird year in basketball. We've had a lot of injuries. We've had a lot of shakeups. We've had a lot of big trades. We had one of the biggest trade deadlines that I can remember, if not the biggest. We might be going into an offseason where we have a ton of movement yet again, because a lot of teams are getting super old, or you've got teams like Utah and OKC that have just draft picks on draft picks.
Yeah, I wonder if like when players get drafted, if there's going to be swaps and trades that occur, like kind of like with the Hawks and the Mavericks for Trae Young, like the Luka thing. Like I could just see them being active in the deadline again, but just like things happening at the draft.
The reason that Mikal Bridges is not on the Sixers is because of a draft day trade.
Yeah.
This would be a very different conversation. Mikal Bridges, granted, we're assuming the same development, was on the Sixers, but like we never have to talk about Tobias Harris again if Mikal Bridges is on the Sixers team.
Yeah, that's the
funny thing. He looks really good. I've been so happy with watching Bridges play.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah.
He's a really, really talented player, and I think there's still a lot of growth to go. I know that you hate this, Valentinos, and I get why you do, because your whole thing is like the only reason that people like these Nets is because they're not a threat, just like the D'Angelo Russell Nets. But that's not why I feel that way. Like, honestly, I think this Nets team has the room to grow into a genuine contender with this cast of players and potentially a likable superstar instead of Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. It's not that they're not a threat. Like, I think they are a threat. I think they're going to make it really hard for another team in the playoffs. They're winning games.
Yeah, they've been fun to watch. I think Bridges obviously has that step to make in his playmaking. I think like he's getting to his spot. I think he's not hesitant on shooting, so he's just shooting the ball a lot more, but he definitely is still doing a lot off ball. And like when you look at the last few possessions in the Nets games, it's like Spencer Dinwiddie ISOs, which that can't be your go-to. And what you fall back on is literally just like Spencer Dinwiddie just like ISOing and passing to a shooter, which is why I think like Luka would be the best version. Because imagine if you just swapped Dinwiddie and Luka. Like if you had Luka to do that,
Dinwiddie goes back to the Mavs again after being on the Nets again. I think at that point he'd be like, "I'm retiring."
That would be funny.
He's just gonna get fully into Bitcoin at that point.
But honestly, like that formula for if you have like a ball dominant forward, or I think Luka would probably be, I guess, a shooting guard, point guard, but like someone with that LeBron type, surround him with shooters and 3-and-D players. Like I think that can be successful. So maybe if we can be a landing spot for a superstar, and just I'm excited to see how this team can develop. Like if they do end up just keeping the same core and trying to build something that Boston has, I don't know if Bridges will be as good as Tatum will ever be, but I think he's going to be like a all-star level scorer. I could see his ceiling being around like a CJ McCollum, which paired with Dame, I mean, CJ was definitely an all-star shooting.
I think Bridges has more potential than McCollum just on physical gifts.
Just because
he's taller, he's rangier. So even if the offense never gets to the point that CJ's at, and we've already seen flashes of it being able to get to that point, he's going to be a better defender because CJ is trash defensively.
And he's an Iron Man.
He's tiny. CJ's like 6 feet tall. Either.
Yeah.
All
I
right.
mean, it's been good.
Yeah, we'll talk when we get to the offseason. We'll talk a little bit about the, I guess, preferred prospects and young players that we each have on every one of these teams. Maybe we'll do a list of like best players under 25 and see if every team has one. I would guess that not every team does. I mean, obviously, everyone has players under 25. Some of them might not have all-star potential, though. So we'll talk about that during the offseason when we also talk about potential draft prospects and where we think guys are going to go in the draft. But I think for today, if we're all good, then we're all good.
All good.
All right, excellent. Like I said at the start of the show, if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you click that like button. Make sure you click subscribe if you have not done so already, and comment below what you want to talk about, what you want us to talk about on future episodes. And if you're listening to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or anything like that, make sure you click that follow button. Make sure you rate and review, and make sure you're checking out each episode as they come out weekly. And please, please, please share us with your friends if you enjoy the Give and Go show, so that more people can listen to our stupid ass takes and our stupid ass jokes about Karl Malone and his love of teenage girls. We'll see you guys next time.
See ya.
Adios.